Hello.
Yeah, you're audible.
Uh,
Please share your screen.
yeah, just a second. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is visible. Please go ahead.
Yes. So, starting with my presentation, my topic for thesis was a center for rehabilitation of the people diagnosed with psychiatric illnesses. The center is located in Pune, India. Yes. So basically, the presented research is directed towards the reintroduction of the individuals recovering from psychiatric illnesses and the center will assess the people towards their recovery. So the research that I did, it was basically starting with the prevalence of psychiatric illnesses in the society. It was observed that the countries with a high GDP rate have more number of people diagnosed with psychiatric illnesses. And as you can see in the pie chart that is presented, the deaths caused by psychiatric illnesses approximately 14.3% of the deaths worldwide. And the population suffering from serious mental health issues is around 1% as compared considering the Indian population. And the population suffering from moderate health issues is around 5 to 10% considering the Indian population. Mental illnesses being one of the most commonly diagnosed disorders lately are yet clenched to the societal stigma that persists in the common population, steadily increasing amongst people, especially in the countries with a high GDP rate. Mental issues have been altering relationships and families, hence negatively affecting the community. Despite the threats that these conditions pose to the society, a person with psychiatric vulnerability often finds it difficult to abide by their fellow mates due to the stigma and unacceptance in the society. So basically, the purpose of this research was to emphasize the need for the provision of psychiatric rehabilitation centers and hence define the role of architecture and landscape in this process of recovery. Rehabilitation is basically a comprehensive approach towards the mental health, and therefore this thesis makes an effort to bridge the gap between the patients in recovery and the community. Psychiatric rehabilitation is basically emphasizing on the independent lifestyle of the people dealing with mental health issues. Rehabilitation encourages them to actively participate in several aspects of life, such as education, employment, social interaction, and more. Psychiatric rehabilitation can be defined as a process that inspires the personal as well as social development of an individual by guiding them through numerous psychological, behavioral, educational, and management skills that facilitate the self-reliant lifestyle. The key focuses that have been taken into consideration while the design and planning of the psychiatric rehabilitation center are communal spaces. Salutogenic approach has been considered. Physical movement of the patients. Workshop areas have been designed to promote the occupational or the vocational interest of the patient. A gymnasium area has been provided. Outdoor areas have been provided to like incorporate the outside and the nature into the design, and com- uh, the design is obviously accessible to all individuals. Biophilic approach has been taken into consideration and meditative environment has been provided. The concept for this rehabilitation center, well, the inspiration was influenced by the circle of life. It encourages the inhabitants to develop both mentally as well as physically, and it synchronizes the health and well-being, mental as well as physical, of the patients. The design will make an effort to establish harmony between three major aspects of the overall felicity of an individual, that is the mind, the body, and the spirit. The facility will assist patients diagnosed with psychiatric illnesses who are in the aftercare phase of their recovery. So this is one of the limitations, that the patients who are in the aftercare phase of their recovery will only be assisted by the Psychiatric Rehabilitation Center. Of course, it is a rehabilitation center, so that part should be taken into consideration. And the space will allow the individuals to practice optimism and reflect the same in their mind and body. So concept development, as I said, the reasons for the issues that are faced by these people are family and relatives, the social stigma, their psychiatric instability, and genetic imbalance may also be one of the reasons. Issues faced by the patients were violence, health problems, community disapproval, and inability to cope with the stress that they come across in day-to-day life. Probable solutions may be providing them with physical activity. As physical activity gives out endorphins, it may help them control their anxiety and feel happier. This would in turn control their behaviors, providing them with proper health care, psychological care, social interaction, and educational facilities. Uh, so transition of solutions into spaces. So these solutions that I listed down, I tried to convert them into spaces such as recreational, outdoor clinical facilities, healthcare center, communal spaces, daycare center, training center, vocational education workshops, etc. So the space allocation that I did was according to 4 types, like brain spaces, spiritual spaces, body spaces, and social spaces. So these spaces would carry out some important roles in the design. Further going on with the concept development, the design of the proposed psychiatric rehabilitation center will be inspired by the harmonization of body and the spirit. The name of the psychiatric rehabilitation center will be Adhyay. So Adhyay is basically a Sanskrit word that elucidates and emphasizes the fact that these psychiatric illnesses are just a segment of individual's life and personality, and not their entire personality. Adhyaya is basically chapter, if we translate it word to word from Sanskrit to English. So the intentions to be addressed in the design are to evoke self-awareness through design and sensory environment, utilize and address architectural elements to deepen an individual's perception of space, to create sensitive spaces as opposed to aggressive architecture, thereby mitigating the intimidation caused by it and thus improving the human to environment connection. And lastly, to design transitional spaces that promote a connection between the mind and the body, hence fulfilling their mental as well as physical state. So site selection and site analysis. As research shows that like the number of people diagnosed with psychiatric illnesses is higher in countries with higher GDP rates. So the site that I selected is based in Pune. So Pune is basically the second most largest city in the state of Maharashtra in India. And I had selected this site in Baudhan, that is one of the suburbs in Pune. So the strength of this site was that it is located in a suburb. So the neighborhood is a newly developing area and it is completely isolated from the core city of the area, yet it is very accessible. It is located in vicinity of nature. So to provide biophilic design, this was one of the strengths that I took into consideration. The neighborhood is not very densely populated. The surroundings offer a welcoming expression and it is accessible from the main road, and it has an access to various other facilities like hospitals or other healthcare centers. The weaknesses of this site were that there is a highway that runs nearby and there is like high traffic in the nearby area. The circulation in the area may cause chaos and it may cause disturbance to the rehabilitation center, but that has been taken care of in the design. Poor pedestrian walkways, lack of shaded sidewalks, absence of green spaces and communal areas like developed ones, and high noise levels in the surroundings. The opportunities were designing green spaces in contextual response, providing aspects to fulfill user needs, designing buffer zones, and designing activity nodes. Further moving on with the design approach and development. So I have given here the site connection, the design approach that I have provided. So it basically involves psychological approach, comprehensive approach, social approach, and the stages of design evolution. So in stage one, we can see that I have considered a build form, a basic build form was evolved. The setting and the volume needed for the building was divided the volume according to the main functions of the psychiatric rehabilitation center. In stage two, I started pushing these spaces alternatively to invite in nature and to create some inner spaces and some interesting spaces. In stage three, the I started expanding the inner gardens to increase the connection with nature and get better daylight and ventilation and natural air inside the design. Stage four was like cutting out the areas and trying to develop interesting parts and establishing a basic relation between the various areas that I had segregated. And the final design was in stage five. So
Your
here is the
time is
ground
up.
floor plan.
I'll have to ask you to wind up soon.
Okay. Yeah. So this was the ground floor plan. So I've basically divided the whole plan into IPD and OPD. So inpatient department and outpatient department. This is basically a G+1 structure that houses the whole rehabilitation center. Here you can see the built and unbuilt massing. The area legend is given below. A healthful neighborhood that establishes and maintains appropriate balance between human existence was basically the idea for designing. This was the first floor plan and west side elevation that I have given here and some of the views. So one of the major focuses were the integration of positive indoor spaces and open spaces, as biophilic design was one of the approaches taken into consideration. These positive spaces would promote the incorporation of biophilic approach in the design. The south side elevation, and I have given some technical details. The like I had designed a built waffle unit for the design.
I'll have to ask you to stop now.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, urban spaces are a home to diverse group of people with diverse expectations. I think the presentation definitely emphasized the ever-present need to address universal design in such spaces. Over to our panelists for their comments. Can we start with Dr. Nabil?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. It's really challenging to design for people who has a psychiatric illness or syndrome, because we need to understand how they think, how they move, how they navigate, and how their feelings at certain point, the depression, the needs to have open spaces or closed spaces, colors, different levels, or just horizontal issues. I needed to see this part in your literature, because when we design for people who have special needs, we need to consider these points in our design. So the end of the design is not just a regular building. It's really devoted for these people. It's really helping them in the architectural elements, in the architectural design, the composition, in the morphology, and even using specific landscape, specific tree height, with even colors, where they're going to be located, where the seating area is going to be located, if they're going to be water feature or not, because it might be something cause harm for them or not. So all of these points and tricks I needed to see in your literature, rather than just you've done a good work. I'm not saying you're not doing a good work, but I'm just wanted in the future, if you're going to continue being specialist at this point, you need to consider how they think, because I think your building or your parcel is too huge to navigate. Maybe you might find, or they might find a problem in the wayfinding. So all of these issues you need to master in order to get the right parameters for design. So when I'm going to question you about the architecture style that you have used, you say, yes, I've used this material because of 1, 2, 3. why you have given this open spaces or closed spaces or even 1 floor or 2 floors, because of these parameters that affects this type of illness. I didn't feel that it was there, or maybe it was there. I don't know. You might tell us if it's you have studied these things.
Yes, sir. I have actually studied them.
That's great, but we need to see them,
Yes,
because
yes, of course.
these are the merit or the sense that you're going to build or your design should be based on. I don't want to take much time, but thank you. It was really interesting, and it's really challenging to design this type of building. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Can we hear from Architect Nicola next?
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. It was really interesting. I completely agree with Nabil about, I mean, the approach of a design for all. So there are a lot of protocols with all the informations and the details you need to consider. So the lightings, the distance between different elements, the hierarchy of certain spaces. So it's really a sensitive type of design, which I think in this type of projects is what actually gives strength. So it's a really sensitive design that works if you work on the details. So it's not really the global perception of the complex, but it's really about like the leaving the spaces in section. So every section has a different approach, has a different type of leaving the space. I think that is really, really crucial. Going back in the order of the presentation, the site analysis, I think, was really crucial. And maybe the scale on Bafdan should have had more attention, because maybe it was really the scale of intervention in terms of urban management. But I think there was maybe a jump between the previous scale of the city and the really detailed one I mean, the really local one. So that I think is something you should work more on, as well as maybe the SWOT analysis you did. Maybe it should have been more specialized. So instead of having a bullet list of just elements, to maybe, I mean, understand where are them on the city, on the surroundings, and on the different spaces. You also mentioned transition, so transition in terms of the mental and physical development of the patients. But I think it's crucial in this type of project to understand, of course, what is the inside, what is the outside, what are the boundaries of the project. In this sense, I think the real approach should be the one of not having like a gated community, so like an island, like it's closed, like they are inside and the city is outside. Of course, you need some technical spaces where you have limits and boundaries, but maybe it would be interesting to study and analyze maybe some transition space where both the citizens, I mean, the city and the patients can actually make something together. So even that transitional space, I think it's something really useful and important in this project. And even in your case, some elements were really interesting, but maybe too small. For example, the design stages should have been bigger because you had really details, and it would have been interesting to see them. And as a last comment, I think your project was really architectural. So you really focused on the mass rather than on the voids, for example. And even in the phases, I mean, we saw how you started from a built volume. So like everything was mass, and then you extracted the spaces to have open spaces. So it's quite the opposite of what we usually do in urban design, where you put buildings and architecture maybe to create spaces and voids. I mean, it's quite the opposite approach, which is interesting. Maybe it was not fully controlled in this scenario. But of course, I really appreciated the topic because it's really sensitive, and I mean, it needs special attention. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Can we hear from you, Dr. Manoj?
Yeah, Savri, I'm in total agreement with what my fellow, co-jury members, review members have already mentioned. So I'm not going to repeat any of those things. But because this particular publication is with respect to larger context, but I believe that these type of spaces do have a major role to play, because urbanization is also posing us a lot of challenges, as I mentioned in the beginning. And one among those challenges is the stress that is being, a part for system. So if you look at it, urban stress management obviously comes to the kind of module of, this type of centers where, human beings are treated. And that is where the whole crux of this particular project is. So what I personally feel here is that you could have done a little bit more, justice to deal with the intricacies of this this type of a space. You mentioned about this 4 spaces, like the brain spaces, spiritual spaces, body spaces, and social spaces, and it would have been interesting if you could convert them into the real sensory experiences. Not very easy, but still, I think that was an opportunity for you, integrating it with concepts of nature and the spatial dimension of the built form. There are several things that you can seriously look upon, which maybe in the future you'll be able to do that. It's quite an interesting topic. Otherwise, I really like to link it like this, like as a smallest unit of stress management as far as urbanization is concerned. So congratulations for that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.